Welcome to the Stewards Enquiry on the winners' enclosure. Martin Dixon joins me now to reflect back on what was a classic weekend of racing. And Martin, the obvious ones didn't always come to the fore.
No, I must admit, we'll cover both races in a little bit more detail, but my general feeling about the 1,000 guineas and the 2,000 guineas was one of being a little bit underwhelmed. To be honest, I felt like neither race lived up to maybe the expectations. Neither race produced a performance that you'll be looking back on in years to come. You see all the old videos coming up in the week before the Guineas, and I don't feel like these are two renewals of the Guineas that'll be forever remembered, if you like, because neither produced a really sparkling performance, a top-notch performance, if you like, for all that they were good races. And the 2,000 in particular was in the event itself, it was proved to be a very competitive finish. But as you say, it was littered, really, the 2,000 in particular was littered with really disappointing performances from some of those horses towards the head of the market.
I mean, and a very strong draw bias as well. We'll have a look at one or two of them. I mean, the Irish dominated, not possibly the Irish horses we thought that would. They were near the back of the field than the front. But Jim Bolger's Poetic Flair won by Shorthead, beating Master of the Season, and Lucky Vega in third. So it was a 1-3 for the Irish. But as you say, a surprising result and very much led by the draw.
Yeah, I mean, stall 4 beat stall 2 beat stall 3. It was surprising. I'm not sure why that was. I wonder if it was more coincidence than anything else, really, to be honest, Emma, because it didn't look like it was sort of a constant theme necessarily throughout the whole of the week at Newmarket necessarily, and they did race more as one group down the centre of the track. But that's where the action unfolded. The likes of Chindit in particular, you could probably mark his effort up a little bit, and I'd say of all of the horses that finished a little bit further down the field, Chindit would probably be the one I would be most positive about, because he was caught away from the main action out of stall 14, and he still came home quite well and finished with a little bit more to give. Poetic Flair, the winner, very likeable horse. He's won 4 of his 5 starts. It's pretty much impossible to knock the horse, to be honest, because he's kept on improving, and over the course of the season he might yet produce one of those top class performances that, as I say, as yet, even in winning a Guineas, he scrambled home. It was a good performance and a game performance from him without being out of the very, very top draw, but he could improve again.
Do you think the winner could stay further?
I think he'll stay 1.25 miles, Emma. He's not in the Derby. He's by Dawn Approach, who, remember, for Jim Bolger, tried the Derby, didn't stay, didn't settle. So they've left him out of that. I don't see him as 1.5 mile horse in the making. He does have plenty of speed, and he was having his first try over even a mile in the Guineas, which clearly suited him. So I think later on in the season, we may see him in an Eclipse or a Champion Stakes, maybe back in Britain, over 1.25 miles. But I think any further than that would be stretching him. And in the short term, really, there's no obvious reason why they shouldn't just stick to 1 mile, because he's produced a much improved performance going up to that trip, and he is just a very genuine, honest horse. As I said, to be viewed as right out of the top draw and maybe mix it with some of the older horses like a Palace Pier, he's going to have to improve a little bit more.
Okay, a few disappointments for Aidan and Joseph O'Brien. Thunder Moon, Battleground and Wembley, 11th, 13th and 14th. We didn't really see that coming, but the tide turned in the 1,000 guineas on the Sunday, and it was Aidan O'Brien's seemingly second string with Frankie Dettori aboard, winning with Mother Earth. Was that a shock to you?
I wouldn't say a shock, because ultimately she had the highest rating coming into the race from last season as a 2-year-old. She was placed in 2 Group 1s, the third in the Fillies Mile at Newmarket over that course and distance, and then she went over to America and she ran very well in the Breeders' Cup as well. So she had some very high quality 2-year-old form that gave her every chance in the Guineas, but clearly all of the talk, the hype was around her stablemate Santa Barbara, who Ryan Moore did ride. And ultimately, I feel like she will develop probably into the best horse out of that 1,000 Guineas. She was just too green. It's asking a lot, isn't it? Second time up on a race course, having just won a maiden contest quite a few months ago, to go and win 1,000 Guineas. And I suspect that she is very, very good and very talented in the way that the reports suggested. But her inexperience just caught her out. Ultimately, she didn't appear to handle Newmarket all that well. Now, if she went back there again, it might be a different story with an experience of the track under her belt. But she's just at a much earlier point in her career, I guess, than Mother Earth, whose experience and professionalism really helped her out on the day.
I really like the performance as well of the second horse, Saffron Beach. I liked her going into the race because she ran well in her trial, finishing second. She was always going to relish the step up in distance. She was only beaten a length. And I think probably the Oaks is her next target. I think on pedigree, she's going to stay 10 furlongs. Whether she stays a mile and a half, I'm not totally sure. But I spoke to Jane Chapelheim. She fully believes she will. She's very well balanced. She's got a great attitude. And I think she is also an exciting horse for the future. One that was quite breathtaking to watch was Moher Fair, which was a 5-length winner in an absolute hat canter. To be honest, in the Newmarket Stakes, you couldn't help but be impressed with him, could you?
No, it's one of those performances that kind of immediately blows you away, and then you sit back in the cold light of day and sort of put your analysis hat on, if you like, and think, well, how good was it? And I think it'll just continue to be questioned until we get an opportunity to see him again. Now, William Haggis has said immediately afterwards, straight to the Derby, that's what we'll do, and we'll find out how good he is. And I think William himself is under no illusions that that race on Saturday possibly fell apart a little bit. The time was unexceptional, so you couldn't really rave about him in that regard. But then he's done it all on his own steam, hard held. He could have run faster if he'd have been asked to run faster, and if something had been capable of going with him for longer in the race. So visually very impressive, clearly a potentially top-class horse, but Saturday's performance doesn't immediately mark him down as that necessarily. Moher Fair into around 8-1 with plenty of bookmakers for the Derby. He will go there if you fancy taking that chance. I wonder if 1.25 miles might end up being his very best trip. And as I say, I think right up to the Derby, you're always going to have these doubts as to whether or not it was really a performance of that kind of merit that would warrant being very prominent in the market for a Derby.
As you pointed out, I was just about to say, obviously 1.5 miles would be an unknown. 2 starts ago, he won over 1 mile, relished, I think, the extra couple of furlongs at Newmarket. I think it certainly brought his performance on. And it will be interesting to see how he gets on over an additional 2 furlongs. But as you say, now about an 8-1 shot for the Derby, and certainly an interesting horse. What about the Pretty Polly? Because this was won by a very game filly indeed, who's got a few miles really under her belt. Mystery Angel was delighted for George Bowie, who's had a great couple of seasons, and that was his first listed winner as a trainer. She was tough, wasn't she? How strong do you think this race was?
Well, I think in time it might prove to be quite a good source of winners. I think it'll throw up some good horses. But for me, Mystery Angel was making a little bit like Mother Earth in the 1,000 Guineas. I think she was using her experience. She'd been to the track before. She's had a lot of racing, and she is a thorough professional. She's the sort of the finished article right now, and she was that on Saturday. And that is ultimately, I think, what played to her strengths in Saturday's race. The runner-up Sea Carrots is a wonderful looking filly. I didn't see it. I was at Newmarket both days, didn't see a better looking horse on the 2 days. She's absolutely fabulous. She's got a great temperament about her as well. She went around the paddock like a lamb, went down to the start really settled and sweetly, and she produced a performance of a very high standard on just her second career start, Sea Carrots. She's got a very good pedigree. She's a sister to Al Arsi, who is also with William Haggis and is set to take high rank amongst the middle distance horses through this year himself. And I think Sea Carrots is really a horse to follow out of the Pretty Polly. Think the Ribblesdale at Royal Ascot is going to be the plan with her. So we'll maybe see her once more before then, but the ultimate target in the short term will be the Ribblesdale at Royal Ascot, and I'd be very positive about her chance if that's where she ends up.
Okay, well, we're going to slightly change tack now because we've spoken about some top equine performances, but the Jockeys title got underway at the weekend. I'll quickly skim through how they bet, depending on which bookmaker you're with. 9-4 Oisin Murphy, 5-2 William Buick, 7-2 Ben Curtis, 9-2-ish Holly Doyle, and 11-2 Tom Marquand. What takes your fancy there? Is there an obvious bargain to be had?
Well, they're all, one thing to say is that they're all riding right at the top of the game, aren't they? And they've all got increased ammunition, I suppose. So it could really develop into a very exciting Jockeys Championship this year, with all of these jockeys, young, upwardly mobile riders that are getting more and more opportunities on a daily basis. I think for that reason, Oisin Murphy might find it more difficult this year to hold on to his jockey's title, but he'll certainly give it a good bash, and he's riding as well as ever. But I do quite fancy William Buick to win it this year. He was only 8 winners behind Murphy in 2020, and he had 175 rides less than Oisin Murphy in the 2020 season. Now, bear in mind that William Buick is probably going to set his stall out a little bit earlier this time in terms of potentially winning that jockey's title. I think he might end up more on par with Oisin Murphy in terms of the number of rides that he takes over the course of this flat season. And if he manages to do that, and you consider his 21% strike rate that he was riding at in 2020, he could give it a real go this year. So William Buick would get my vote, but the likes of Marquand and Holly Doyle and Ben Curtis, they'll all be having a good go at it.
Yeah, really competitive, isn't it? And they're all hungry jockeys that are not afraid of riding at 2 meetings as often as they can and banging in the winners. So it'll certainly be fascinating. But I totally agree with you. If I was to have a bet at this stage, it would be William Buick at about 5-2. So time to ask you a couple of horses that caught your eye in the week somewhere.
Well, I'm going to go a bit left
Can be
field
anywhere.
a bit left field to places where people may not have been watching the racing necessarily. But I was lucky enough to be at Redcar on Thursday before I went down to Newmarket, and I saw a filly called Celestial Queen in the Clipper Logistics colours, and she absolutely bolted up. She won her handicap debut from a mark of 59, and you will not see an easier winner in the flat season. And that allows for Mohaf F, because she met all sorts of trouble in running. She had to switch around the whole field to the far flank, and then she quickened through it in no time to the lead and basically just won on the bridle, hard held. She's clearly miles better than a mark of 59. She beat a last time out winner into second in Cosmic Raj, and the field got very well strung out as well. So I'd say she has stacks in hand of her handicap mark, Celestial Queen, and I'd expect her to be winning again. And on Sunday at Salisbury, I wasn't there, but I did see a filly called Rosemary and Time finish off her race pretty fast from off a slow gallop and finish second at Salisbury on Sunday. And I think it'll pay to follow her as well.
Okay, my couple of eye catchers, I've actually spoken about one of them, and that was Saffron Beach, because I just think there's going to be a lot more to come from her. Such a promising run when she was second in the Guineas. As I said, I think the Oaks is what they're going to target next. And I think they'll have lots of fun with her. And the other one, slightly off-piste, was a horse called Solar Screen in the 425 at Goodwood on Friday. Was always behind, had quite a lot of ground to then make up. And I just think quite often David Simcock's horses improved quite a lot for their first run. He's a stayer, this horse, and I think there are races to be won with him. Looking ahead to this week, Chester. I mean, it's such an exciting time of year. You've got Guineas, Chester, York. You've got Derby and Oaks trials coming at you very quickly from all directions. Wednesday, you've got Cheshire Oaks. You've got Chester Vars, so Derby and Oaks trials. You've got Japan, who's likely to come back in the Ormond. Very good horse in 2019, slightly missed and was off a bit last year. Then you've got the Chester Cup. Are there any sort of particular races you're looking forward to?
All of the above, really. It's an exciting week at Chester. We know what we'll be looking back at this time next week, don't we? We'll have plenty to discuss from Chester.
Unlucky horses from bad draws. Eye catchers.
Yeah, you do have to have the draw and position on your side at Chester, that's for sure, isn't it? But remind people, low draws, horses that get out the gates fast, that's what you need. You need something that's got gate speed, that has the draw on its side. Those handicaps are tremendously difficult for jockeys, I suppose, as much as anything, because it's such a tight track and they're all crammed on top of one another. But it is good to see Chester back. They missed last season, didn't they, because of COVID? Obviously the meeting is made by the crowd in many ways. So it's going to be a little bit disappointing, obviously, not to have the roar of the crowd at Chester like it is everywhere.
And it's made a bit by the weather. And looking at the forecast this week, it's not going to be great. But it's, as you say, there's not going to be a big crowd there. So we will enjoy it from our armchairs. I think probably the best place to watch it on this occasion.
Yeah, probably. The horse that's going to be favourite for the big race on the Friday, the Chester Cup, is Almigua. And his form ties in with Merha Feth, who we've discussed already, a potential Derby horse. Now, Almigua bumped into him on his first start this season. He finished second to him at Kempton on the all-weather, and he was by no means discredited when you consider that what Merha Feth has gone on to do. And the horse that finished third in that race, I think, was beaten 8 lengths, and he also won his next start. So that Kempton form from Almigua is exceptionally strong, and if he was granted a pretty handy enough draw, then he'd be a huge player, I think, in the Chester Cup.
Lovely, Martin, thank you very much. We'll chat to you at the end of the week. Enjoy Chester from the comfort of your armchair, and get the record button on to look for all those unlucky horses that we'll talk about next week.